All right, back again on the Fantasy Football Podcast. We're going to do things a little bit differently tonight. I didn't really have the time today to devote that I normally do in going through the week and making some notes and putting together the power rankings and all that. So we're going to kind of ad-lib things a little bit, take a break from the normal run of show as far as the podcast is concerned, but still take some time to go through how things went down last night. I was at the game. It was a lot of fun. The weather was nice, and the Bears put a beat down on the Lions, despite Cutler getting absolutely destroyed by Ndamukong Suh. He bounced back, and the Bears were able to put it away. So it was a great game. We had a couple of matchups that were closely decided by it. I know Oaks against Billy. Billy ended up winning as Pettigrew really didn't do too much. Robbie Gould added a little points, but kickers don't do that much, and the Bears D had a big game. So Billy ended up beating Oaks pretty badly. I know myself against Smith, I was done for the week. I was trailing Smith by almost 15 points, and he had Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson just got absolutely shut down by Charles Tillman, so I didn't have to sweat that one too much, although I did end up losing to Kraus pretty early on. Kraus needed about 9.5 points to beat me out of Brandon Marshall, and he got a touchdown on the first drive, and Marshall had a big game. So, I mean, that one, whatever. How upset can I really be? I didn't think that would happen. Kraus got his comeuppance, though, when he lost to Denenberg. He got some good points out of Brandon Marshall, as previously mentioned, but Forte had a pretty big game. Kraus ended up losing by less than 5, which, as he's pointed out several times this week, obviously is a pretty tough luck loss, as Blaine Gabbert went out with a shoulder injury, and Maurice Jones-Drew went down on the first carry of the game, or second carry of the game. So that's a tough one there for Kraus. I think every other matchup was pretty much decided. I know, obviously, Deutsch, as mentioned in the Monday morning update, had won the league weekly high points for the third week in a row. It was only the second time in history. And we had an all-time low set by Ben with the total of 47 points. So good job to everyone there. Looking at a couple of other matchups from this past week, obviously we had the cataclysmic showdown of Deutsch versus Ariel. Deutsch ended up taking this one by about 10 points, despite Kyle Rudolph not really doing anything. Deutsch got another big game from Percy Harvin and from Rogers and Nelson, who appear to be kind of heating up a little bit. Even Darren Sproles contributed to the winning effort there. Denenberg had a pretty good chance. His team played pretty decently. He had the second highest point total on the week, so obviously it's a little unfortunate to lose to the highest point scorer, but it is what it is. He ended up getting nothing from Vernon Davis. RG3 had a big game despite a fumble. Victor Cruz obviously had that massive 77-yard touchdown catch. Arian Foster put up 2 TDs. Guy's unstoppable, and AP was great. So, I mean, really, Ariel can't be too upset. But, that was the clash of the Titans. That was the first big showdown between those two teams. Looking at some of the other matchups, let's see what do we got here. As I mentioned to you, I'm doing this kind of on the fly, so I apologize for the slow pacing of it. Justin got an absolute blowout victory over Ben, winning by 30 points, which has got to be Justin's largest margin of victory this year. He had a pretty pathetic effort. I mean, 77 points is terrible, but was able to pick up a win by playing Ben, who, as previously mentioned, was pathetic on the week. I guess, what might be a good point to do now is we're past the halfway mark of the season. We're 7 weeks in. We've got 7 weeks left to go. Would be to just kind of go division by division, take a look at how we stand. It's not quite the equivalent of the power rankings, but give you a bigger picture. Starting with the closest contested division would be the Lane Bryant division at this point. Oaks is currently in first with a record of 8-6. He's got 1,453 total points. And then myself, Kraus, and Plotzker are all tied at 6-8. There is a pretty large discrepancy in total points, a pretty big range. I am currently in second place with 1,380. Kraus trails me by 1,348, and then Plotzker brings up the rear with 1,265. So really, I've made my thoughts pretty clear on this. I feel like Oaks' team is going to bow out. I mean, you saw things kind of pick up this week. He ended up, he went 1-1 in the week, but that's just because he beat Plotzker's team, who had a terrible week. He put up 96 points, which is not too bad, but I just feel like Oaks' team is headed for a fall. I mean, he obviously sold off his best players. There's only so far that Brandon Weeden and Ryan Tannehill are going to get you. So I think Oaks is going to start to cool off, obviously, a little bit. And Plotzker's team is, he's in there with the wins. I think he had a couple of big weeks where he picked up some wins, but he trails pretty severely in total points and is in a similar position to Oaks, in which he had sold off a lot of his best assets and appears to be kind of, not really in a position to take over things. So really, I mean, I feel like it's going to be me or Kraus for the division lead. Kraus beat me this past week. I think he actually beat me earlier in the season as well. Kraus has now beaten me twice, and that's really, if you look at it, the biggest thing separating, or keeping me from separating myself from the pack is my division record. I mean, Kraus is 4-2 against the division, Oaks is 4-2, Plotzker's 3-3, and I'm 1-5. So I think my only win might have been over Oaks in week 1 or something like that. No, you know what? In fact, it was over Plotzker in week 2. So, that's something that I need to work on, obviously, moving forward is winning divisional games. As far as Kraus, I mean, he's got a good squad, definitely. I think he made some good moves. Obviously, the Maurice Jones-Drew injury definitely hurts him, but Antonio Brown and Roethlisberger have been a really good combo for him. Jimmy Graham missing last week definitely doesn't help, and Phillip Rivers needs to step his game up a little bit. But, I mean, if you look at my team against Kraus's team, we have certain different strengths. I like to think my team's a little bit better, just because my quarterback situation is a little bit better. But obviously, as he took me out this week, Kraus has proven there's not much of a difference. So moving on, looking at the Schindler division here. This one is interesting. This one really took a turn at midseason. As it stands right now, Ariel is in first place with a 10-4 record with 1,556 points, the most points in the league. In second place is Denenberg at 9-5, only one game out of first, but with a big gap in total points with only 1,323. In third is the surging Brian Deutsch, who's won 7 in a row. He currently stands at 7-7, but as we all remember, was winless before then, was 0-7 for a little bit, or was 0-6, and then went 1-1 that first weekend. So now he's 7-7. He's got total points as 1,489 points, and then bringing up the rear is Brian's brother Justin with a record of 3-11 with 1,179 total points. So I mean, really, if you want to start at the back and look at the rear, I mean, Justin is 3 wins behind both of the other fourth place teams in the league. Really, he is in a position where his total points are so low that he could be clinching the Clown, within the next 3 or 4 weeks, which is pretty insane. Really, if you look at his team, it's somewhat surprising, man. On paper, it's not really that bad. Matt Ryan's been really good this season. He's got Deshaun Jackson and Steve Smith, Heath Miller, Michael Crabtree. I mean, these guys are not exactly elite, high-level receivers, but they're pretty good players. I mean, not too bad. So they've had their moments this year. You wouldn't think that, that his team would be as terrible as it is, but it just, for whatever reason, it's just not putting it together. He does have Josh Freeman in there. He just recently acquired. Freeman had a big week this past week and ended up actually getting Justin a win. So, if he's able to string some things together and DeMarco Murray can get healthy quick, then maybe he makes a little bit of fight. Maybe Ben or Plotzker or some of the other teams that are in fourth place right now might take a nosedive. So that's Justin's really his best hope at this point. If you look at Brian Deutsch, I mean, obviously Deutsch is surging, as I just mentioned. I mean, he went out of his way to go and pick up a pretty solid arsenal of players at the trade deadline. Definitely attempting to buy a championship this year. I was actually having a conversation online with Brian today and told him that I almost respect his desire to go out and buy a championship. I was going through some old notes, and actually it dawned on me that this is actually our 5th year of doing this league. I know earlier in the month we had been discussing how next year is our 5th year anniversary and how we should come up with a team of the half decade, but it looks like that team of the half decade is going to come out this season. I don't know how we all missed this, but we did actually start this league in 2008. So there was 08, 09, 2010, 2011, and now 2012 is our 5th season. So we were talking about it. Deutsch was asking me what places he finished, and he finished second to last in 2008. He was definitely in the bottom 4th of the league in 2009. We all know the past 2 years haven't gone so well for him. So I think for him, he's like the 2008 Boston Red Sox. Just go out and say screw it and enough losing. Go out and buy yourself a championship. Like Owen Hart said, enough is enough, and it's time for a change. I think it's a good move. So if you look at that division right now, Deutsch is obviously he's on his way up. He does currently stand in third. Denenberg is in second place, but it just has a serious gap in total points. I mean, he's at this point he's kind of keeping things together. He had a really hot start, but isn't doing so well as of late. Jamal Charles is kind of cooled off. Forte was good last night. Miles Austin has been really good for him, but it's just those quarterbacks. I mean, Tony Romo is just inconsistent, and when he is consistent, when they are winning games, I think they run it a lot more. So there's only so much you can rely on him for. Joe Flacco has just bottomed out. I mean, Joe Flacco was great to start the year and just has kind of bottomed out. He's starting Mark Sanchez this week, so that's always going to be an adventure. So Denenberg, unfortunately, it looks like he's caught in between two freight trains there with Ariel and Deutsch, both of which went out and fortified themselves. Denenberg didn't do too much at the trade deadline. Speaking of Ariel, he currently is dominating the league. He's at 10-4 with a crushing total points lead. So it'll be interesting to see if Deutsch can really catch him up or just end up clinching the wild card and make some noise in the playoffs. But Ariel's team is just, it's really incredible. It's great. It's given Ted's team from last year a run for his money. Even when Eli has been a little bit slow, RG3 has just gotten, he's gotten back on track. You hear people talking about MVP talk for RG3. He's got the number 1 and number 2 running backs in fantasy football. Victor Cruz is just making big plays. Mike Wallace should have had an even bigger week, but he was dropping balls left and right, which you don't normally see. Des Bryant, I think, is the third option is whatever. I mean, I don't think he's so hot, but, for when you're starting Victor Cruz and Mike Wallace, you don't really have too much to worry about. Obviously, Ariel's team is very good. It's going to be pretty interesting to see how things break down the stretch with that division. I'm looking to see if they play each other again. And you know what? In fact, they do play each other in Week 10. And actually, also, Ariel and Deutsch play each other 2 more times, one of which is in Week 14. So you're going to see that last week of the season could potentially be a chance for Deutsch to win the division or to take over the total points lead. That should definitely factor into how the playoffs are set up. So pretty interesting. All right, finally, looking at the Shame of Sherwood featuring Bob Ross, we've got Ben in last place with a record of 6-8 and total points 1,318. In third, tied, in third and second with the same record is Billy and Smith. Both are 7-7. Smith does have a very small edge with 1,437 total points, and then in first is Bootsy with a record of 9-5, and actually the third lowest point total in the division with just 1,403. Not that far behind, but in third. Bootsy's team this year has been pretty good. He obviously drafted pretty well. I think that giving away RG3 was definitely a mistake, but he's got a good squad. I remember when he picked up Vincent Jackson, I thought it was a terrible move. I don't think I commented on it really, but I had written down that it was one of the worst picks in the draft, and I was dead wrong. He got him for $8. I thought Vincent Jackson was just going to take that money from his contract and just walk into the sunset, but I was incorrect. Vincent Jackson's been really, really good this year. Willis McGahee's been solid. Dwayne Bowe has been the king of garbage time. And Ryan Matthews was on a bye last week, and so Bootsy will have a chance to see Matthews, have a chance to see how good he can be. That was really the big, acquisition in that RG3 trade. So that'll be important for Bootsy to see how that turns out. Bootsy does have, let's see. He's got Aaron Hernandez at tight end. I was going to say he's kind of weak at tight end, but he's got Hernandez. Fred Davis is out for the year, so he's going to need to find some way to shore that up. Looking at Smith and Billy, I mean, obviously Billy's, bad luck has been covered ad nauseum on this podcast. He is... he's got a good team. Obviously, Drew Brees is really, where the conversation starts and ends when it comes to Billy's chances. Brees is just, he's clearly the best quarterback in fantasy. He just stacks up points every week, and it looks like that $110 salary was definitely worth it. Alfred Morris really is making his case for waiver pickup of the year. He is fantastic. I mean, he's really good. He's consistent, which is the craziest part with Mike Shanahan. It'll be interesting, especially with this week. Billy has some guys on bye. He's got Schaub and Andre Johnson, as well as Bolden and his kicker on a bye, so he's going to need to flip some pieces around, but I thought picking up Jeremy Curley was a really nice move. He also has Brian Hartline. So Billy's in pretty good shape. Smith was somewhat of a hard luck loser this past weekend. He, let's see, Smith. Yeah, I mean, he had Calvin Johnson. Obviously, he had 15 points to overcome is kind of a lot, but from a guy like Calvin Johnson, he just hasn't been able to find the end zone this year, which has been strange. I guess call it the Madden curse, whatever you want. But for whatever reason, Calvin Johnson's been somewhat of a disappointment for Smith. Smith, would have had a better chance of beating me. Ray Rice was really poor this week as well, and Felix Jones was not so hot himself. Welker didn't really bring it. Fitzpatrick was probably his best player. Palmer hit Denarius Moore for a touchdown that really kind of evened the gap. If you look at Smith's team, I mean, really he's been getting pretty good performances from what on paper are kind of ugly quarterbacks with Palmer and Fitzpatrick. Both have been pretty solid. Kevin Kolb going down kind of hurts him. I remain to think that picking up Tim Tebow was a good move for him. I think Tim Tebow will be the starter sooner rather than later, which will give Smith the opportunity to bench either Palmer or Fitzpatrick and get Tebow in there. Tebow proved last year he can be a really good fantasy quarterback. So I think Smith's team is good. I think it is, kind of middle of the road. Smith hasn't really made too many big moves. He hasn't made any big waiver pickups or wasn't really involved too much in any of those huge trades. I know he made a trade at the beginning of the year, but nothing too insane. So I don't know. It'll be really interesting to see Smith and Billy if they can threaten Bootsy. Bootsy's team is good, but it's not like he has any kind of stranglehold on that division, especially trailing behind Smith in the total points league. And then if you look at Ben, I mean, I just don't know how to call it with Ben's team. And Ben's team is definitely in last in a tight division. He certainly trails by a somewhat of a significant margin of total points. He was doing all right until this week, and then putting up that 47-point stinker kind of hurts him. I think that Trent Richardson's injury is a real problem for him. LaShawn McCoy is solid. Ben keeps rolling Jermichael Finley out there, which I just think is a joke. Jermichael Finley is an absolute waste of time. But this week will be interesting. I don't think it's really going to get any better for Ben. He's got Dalton on a bye. He's got his kicker and defense on a bye. He's got to drop him, so he's going to have to juggle some stuff around, and then he's going to have to decide whether he really wants to keep rolling Alex Green out there, or if he maybe wants to bet on a D'Angelo Williams bounce back game against the Bills. He's got some decisions to make this week. Should be kind of interesting. Ben, obviously, he just needs to score more, really. I mean, after this past week, he definitely just needs to get back out there and kind of put this week behind him and see if he can get back on the horse. But I mean, definitely nothing is decided in the Seamus Sherwood division. They're pretty much just as close as Lane Bryant is. So there's looking at the divisions. It actually took a little bit longer than I thought it would, considering I had no idea what I was going to talk about. Looking towards next week, we got, let's see, myself against Oaks, always a good grudge match. Hopefully I can take it to him. And then, let's see, Bootsy against Smith will be nice. Smith needs that one to try and take a crack at the lead. You've got Ariel against Denenberg. That's another, first versus second place matchup. Talking about, just looking down the list here. Kraus at Bootsy is a good one. And then, obviously, Plotzker against Kraus is always fun for a little bit of trash talking. That's pretty much it. That's all I got for this week. I solicited a couple of mailbag questions, but didn't really get anything my way, so not much to report on that end. I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention again that, believe it or not, this actually is the 5th anniversary of the Coolrophobics Anonymous, of our fantasy league. I went through on Yahoo. They have records. They have history of some of our old sites, and they have listings of the old message board, but unfortunately you can only access the most recent ones, the ones that were towards the end of the season, so there's not other stuff. I remember looking for any type of record of the Ted Ginn trade that had been discussed so much recently, and it must have been on that message board. I kind of forgot that in the time before we switched to CBS and used this listserv email, that we used to use that Yahoo message board to communicate everything. So I wish there was some way of cracking that open. Unfortunately, you can only get access to that last page. Maybe it's just my computer at work. If anyone else can do it, let me know. But otherwise, thanks for listening. I promise next week we will be a little bit more organized in the podcast, unless, of course, you guys like this format better, because this is much easier for me. So until next week, go Bears.